Welcome to the Field of 68 After Dark's YouTube channel. We are going to be live every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time right here on YouTube and on Stadium for the entirety of the spring. AJ and Cameron, where do you know anything about kind of how that recruitment is going right now?
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to come down to Duke and Miami for Boozer. That's what it sounds like. Again, I'm no recruiting expert here, but certainly talking to people at Indy, EYBL, it sounds like it's kind of a two-horse race for the top there for the Boozers, and it's Miami, which I think they live in Miami, and obviously Duke, where Carlos went to school. Dybantsa is a little different. His recruitment's very, I don't want to say unique right now, but certainly his dad Ace is kind of spearheading things with his recruitment. They've made one visit to Auburn so far. And you got to remember, again, he lives in Brockton. Bruce Pearl grew up in Sharon, Mass. So there's that connection there. Alabama, Preston Murphy, the new Alabama assistant coach, newish, coached him in AU ball before he took the job at Alabama. So I think Alabama will be in the mix too. But UConn, I certainly think will be in the mix. But I think this is going to be one where like NIL is going to be, critical. I don't think he's going to go somewhere for like low money. Now, again, as I've said before, a program like UConn might be a little bit different, but I also think, AJ, they want AJ to be somewhere where he's highlighted and not just another dude. And it'll be interesting to see how that thing shakes out. But I still think it's a little bit early there. And then you go with Tyron Stokes. And, yeah, coaches aren't even allowed to, I think, reach out to him until maybe June or something like that. So that's super early in the process. But it was interesting, Rob, because after the game I saw on Friday night, Stokes played one of the better all-around games I've seen in years on the circuit. He was that good. Like, he did everything. Again, he's an elite passer, but he scored. He dunked over dudes. He was great in transition. He defended. He rebounded. He shot the three. He was phenomenal. And after the game, all of a sudden, you look over and you see him sitting on the bench talking to nobody. And there's like 10 reporters talking to AJ. And AJ had a good game, but not a great game, just good. And part of that is obviously you had a bunch of Kentucky reporters there, right? Beat reporters and team site guys that wanted to talk to AJ. And part of that is Stokes being a year younger and not being as far along, certainly in the recruiting process and who he could talk to. But I just thought it was interesting. Stokes is a Louisville native, by the way. So I would assume Pat Kelsey and the Cards are going to be all over him to try to bring him back home. I would think they'll be, among the finalists when it all kind of everything clears. But we're a ways away from that.
Where do you stand on what his ceiling is? Because just basically listening to you talk right there, I am preparing myself for the next 30 months of hearing nothing about how good Tyron Stokes is, how you discovered him, how you've seen him. But remember that one time when I was in Indy and he was phenomenal. I'm just preparing myself for this. So we love to have these conversations. We love to say like, ooh, but Tyron Stokes is a higher ceiling than this guy. And I literally just said DJ Dybantsa might have a higher ceiling than Cooper Flagg. But where do you stand on like how, let me phrase it like this. Put these prospects into context, right? With even Cooper Flagg, Dybantsa, Tyron Stokes, are we talking about guys that are like the elite of the elite, like potential number one picks, potential franchise guys? Or are we talking about like maybe someone at the top of the 2023 class or the 2024 class where they're pros for sure, but we're not there. It's a different level. You know what I'm saying? It's a different level for them.
No, I think these guys are at a different level than the last few classes that we've seen. I think all three of them are for different reasons. They're all different players too. Mm-hmm. And Stokes, listen, as I was gushing watching him Friday night, I did have somebody tell me like, this is probably the best I've ever seen him play. So sometimes you get that too. We're not there for every game. I'm not covering him every game in high school and on the circuit. So sometimes you get, listen, I remember the first time, I saw Rowan Brumbaugh, right, coming out of the pandemic, and I was gushing. But it's true. Like we see games that sometimes are a little bit outliers, whether it's for the betterment or sometimes they play like shit and you see him and you're like, man, I've seen him play twice. And you could try to tell me that he's the best player in the country, but man, I've seen him twice and he played like absolute garbage. It's hard to get that out of your mind. So I think I saw Stokes on maybe his best day, and I want to see him more, obviously, in July when we go to the Peach Jam. But man, just the skill. And again, if he can make shots, and I guess his 3-point percentage went from like it was not good at all before he got to prolific prep. And then this past year, I think he was somewhere in the 30%, 32, somewhere in that neighborhood where he became more comfortable shooting the three. If he works, man, I'm just telling you, like the skill set is really impressive.
Yeah, he popped last year too. Like he was really, really impressive last year at EYBL. And one of the guys that I am excited to see when we go down there. Let me ask you this, and we got about a minute and a half here before we got to get to break. But how important is it for recruiting freshmen right now for these coaches, right? Like obviously when you get a player like a Dybantsa or a Boozer or a Stokes or a Cooper Flag where they can change your program for a year, like you got to go after those guys. But for the most part, I do feel like there's been a swing from the emphasis and the time that a lot of coaches spend on evaluating freshmen over 3 or 4 years and just attacking the portal and saying, this is how we're going to build our team from now on. Instead of building for a 4-year window, we're going to build for a 1 to 2 year window and just go get these guys that want to transfer. How important is it to actually be able to evaluate these dudes on the high school circuits?
So I think it'll change a little bit talking to coaches next year, or they think it'll change and go back to a little bit more of what it was because you're getting rid of the COVID, the 5th-year kid. So like the RJ Davis isn't going to be in college basketball anymore. You know, Baycott from this past season. A lot of those guys are no longer going to be around. So they feel like the gap will shrink a little bit instead of, you know, you're looking at it now and you're thinking, all right, top 10, maybe top 20 high school guys are going to have a major, major impact. Well, maybe it'll go back to a little bit closer to what it was where, you know, maybe the top 50 high school kids once you get rid of all these COVID kids. Because, again, a lot of them, if you look at it last year and you're going to look at it this year, a lot of the top 50 players in the country are 5th-year kids, are COVID players. So if you get rid of them, a lot of those freshmen will kind of take their place and play more and impact more. So I do think, again, it'll start to shrink a little bit.
I'm going to go out on a limb here, Jeff, and I'm going to say that I'm kind of in the camp where I think we should add a 5th-year eligibility. I don't think that this has been a bad thing, allowing players to be able to come back for a 5th year of college. Now, again, you got to find a way to be able to get the structure of the portal and the structure of the NIL in place where it's not an absolute free-for-all from the second that the first team season ends until the portal actually closes, right? Like you got to find some way to be able to make this be any way coherent as an actual real life sport, which college basketball sometimes does not feel like it is. But I'm with it, man. Like these 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds have made the games so much better and so much more fun to watch. And I think I would make the argument that the level of basketball right now is as high as we've seen it since probably like the middle of the one and done era, right? Just the amount of talent that is staying in college because of
Why
NIL.
not give them,
keep them around for longer. Give them 6 years. Give them 7 years.
Let them all be Robbie Hummels. Let them all be Robbie Hummels and play as long as they want.
Thanks for watching the Field of 68 After Dark. Make sure to hit that like button.